example to make us understand. So as we move around, Deva Priti, do we love God? Papa Bhiti, do we abhor sin? Do we fear of sin? Do we stay away from sin? And the moment you grow more and more in Deva Priti, Papa Bhiti will start diminishing, right? This is reciprocal. And Sanghaniti, are we coming into this good company, satsang that we are talking about? Are we getting into that mode? So again, it's an important part when we set into this spiritual journey which you are progressing, journey which you are moving, we have to measure and see. So from satsangatve nisangatve nirmohatvam, all work is God work. The next parameter, the next milestone in this journey is, are we distinguishing between God's work and the material world? What work is whose? Again, while we'll delve this little more, it is important to understand when Professor Venkat Raman, when Swami was giving a session, taking a session with the MBA boys, and then he was talking about how the pen is. He created a golden pen. He spoke about how this is marketed, what are these constitutes of, and then as he finished the lecture, he was walking out and he said, "Okay." He saw Professor Venkat Raman. He said, "Okay, you have it. Keep it with yourself." Okay. So the golden pen was given to Professor Venkat Raman. And Professor Venkat Raman, the days to follow, yes, he got busy because he was vice chancellor those days. And then he used to use for his normal work and all, the normal ballpoint pen. And that was what it is. So after a few days, there was an interview. Swami had called him also. And suddenly Swami's sight went onto the pocket of Professor Venkat Raman, where he saw the pen was a ballpoint pen. And Swami says, "Well, where is the golden pen that I created and gave it to you? I told you, keep it and use it." He says, "Swami, yeah, that's right. I use this pen for all my office job and all. And when Swami's discourse or anything is done, then I will take notes with that pen. So I keep that only for Swami's work." And then Swami said, "Where is the difference? Which at all in this world is not Swami's work? When the whole creation has emanated from me, everything that has come out of me, everything is Swami's reflection, then what work you are talking about not to be Swami's work?" So every work is Swami's work. That's so important. And then another part of experience which Professor Bhagya shared, okay, when he came to Puttaparthi to join the college, okay, and then Swami gave him to be the position to be a professor, and he was going on with his teaching. And then one fine day, Swami put his hand on his forehead and blessed him. And Professor Bhagya says that suddenly he found a different state of ecstasy, calmness, soothness, and he felt a different world altogether. And this lasted, brothers and sisters, for a few days. After that, he came back to, what he restored was into the normal state of being, while he says that I came back to abnormality after that. Because when you taste that, everything else becomes normal. Now, there was an interview once, and Professor Bhagya said, there is something so much deep in spirituality. We are only on the surface. I need to dig deeper. I need to go into this because that taste of bliss was so high and intoxicating. I can't stay without it. So he offered his resignation from the institute. Everybody said, "No, Swami has given you this job. How can you offer?" No. Swami also gave me that experience. That means I have to work on that experience. And he gave the resignations. There was an interview going on, and then he said, "So what is going on, Bhagya? How are you?" And so Professor Bhagya says that, "Swami, you gave me such an experience. I've resigned from the university and I want to focus on the spiritual sadhana." You know what Swami said, brothers and sisters? Swami said, "Bhagya, if you differentiate between spiritual work and office work, and this is not spiritual, even in 1,000 births, I will not give you moksha. Even in 1,000 works, I will not give you. Not that you will not get, I will not give you." And Professor Bhagya, he calculated each birth about 70 years, 70, 80 years into 1,000 is 80,000 years. Oh my God, 80 births. Who is going to wait? He suddenly retrieved and reverted his decision. He took back his resignation and continued. So what this shows, how beautifully Bhagwan explains, brothers and sisters, it's not just when we sit in front of the order, we go to Narayan Seva or we go to Science Center, that's Swami's work. It's very important for us to understand, let's not go into Swami's work. Let's pull out Swami into our work. So that when we are walking, when we are working, when we are talking, when we are doing seva, when we are doing office job, it's all Sai Maya. All right. So it's very important part. All work is God work, and to have an udasin bhava, that is neutrality. We'll come to that. So these are important part of the journey that we have undertaken. Are we spiritually progressing? Are we going in the right direction? So these are some of the milestone, the pointers. Sai Sannidhi, are we able to experience and feel closeness and more proximity to the divine within? Are we having those moments of solitude where we explore and delve and dive deeper into that feeling? All right. So this is another part, and CIA is nothing but constant integrated awareness. So you can't have a Sai Sannidhi unless you are not practicing CIA. That is, you are unifying your heart, head, and hand, right, to get into that symphony with the Sai within. All right. So started the journey with Satsangatve, then come Nisangatve. Why Satsangatve? When you, I mean, in the worldly paths, when you're born with family and you have things and people around. So you are like a Satsang, like a group together. And then from there, you start your journey Nisangatve. So you come to an individual state where you start working on the individual sadhana. All right. So let's move on. From Sai Sannidhi, again, then we progress when we start having this Nishchal Tattva. That means our heart becomes pure, Nishchal, pristine. When somebody can write on a slate, if nothing is written, right, we can't go and offer ourselves and say, Swami, I want your love and this. No, first you have to empty, unlearn what we have done, right? So it's very important. The heart has to be pristine, pure, so that he can write his script. He can write his story out there. He can pour his love on them. When somebody went to Buddha with come and said, that I want to be your disciple and to learn, and Buddha gave him a cup and he said, okay, now can you pour water on it? So he went pouring, and then everything was going out, and Buddha said, but master, I didn't understand. Lord Buddha said that your cup is already full. Whatever I want to pour is just spilling out. So it is very important that you first unlearn, first you remove what you have within, make space, because Bhagavan says your heart is a single seated sofa in which only Swamis should sit. There cannot be a musical chair. There cannot be many chairs. And then finally we try to get him one chair in between that. It has to be a single seated sofa. So that can happen when we have Nishchal Tattvam, pure and pristine, and finally leading us to Aham Brahmasmi, to realize that I am the same divine. All right. And that is the state of Jivan Mukti. And that's when it happens, brothers and sisters, the day dawns where Bhagavan reveals himself in the form that he has come to reveal. Until then, it's more of a physical exercise, more of an affection and emotion rather than devotion. All right. And then the whole journey starts with a koham. When a child is born, when an infinite soul gets incarcerated in a form, cries koham, who am I? To the journey revealing us back into I am that, I am he, Aham Brahmasmi. That's the spiritual journey where we have these indicators flowing in to make us understand. All right. Sarvam Vishnumayam. When you come to that state, everything looks godly. When Swami Vivekananda had this experience of when Ramakrishna, when he went, I cannot see Ma Kali, and he went to complain that, I have been following you, I've been doing this, but I'm suffering so much. My mother, I have to, toil hard to get even the food and the meal, and there is so much of poverty, so much of challenges. Why don't you ask? Because you talk to Mother Kali. Why don't you ask on my behalf and tell her my problem? Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa said, well, why don't you go and tell? No, but will she talk to me? Ramakrishna said, you go and try. That's the only way I do it. What's the difference? So Swami Vivekananda goes, sits down into meditation in front of the mother altar, and then spends some time completely, lost. And when he comes back, so Ramakrishna Paramahansa asked, so Naren, did you ask what was troubling you? No, I forgot to ask. Then what did you do? I don't know, I just got lost. It was complete bliss and ecstasy. I forgot my problem, forgot my question. And that's where I think every one of us who have been with Swami, who have had his darshan, we have a lot of things to ask. And suddenly when the form appears in front of us, the tears start rolling down. You don't know what to ask. Why? Because you are overwhelmed with the tremendous spiritual vibration that engulfs you in presence of Bhagavan. And that's what Swami Vivekananda says. I had nothing to ask. I could not ask. He could not ask a worldly question. And that is the state which we have to head towards. where the question cease to exist. All right. So Ishwar Sarva Bhutanam, that's another part. When we start looking, it's not only Aham Brahmasmi that Bhagwan is in me. When we start looking into everyone having the same, and we start loving them, we don't hate them. We don't hate them. Satyam Satatam Yoginaha. Bhagwan says in the morning when you eat, you are a yogi. I mean, when you get up, you pray, you are a yogi. In the daytime, you are a bhogi. In the nighttime, you become a rogi. That means our participation in connecting with Bhagwan is only restricted to some Sundays, some Thursdays, or some Narayan Seva. It is not Satatam Yoginaha. And that is why what it happens is, again, when we don't put the primer of these sadhanas, the rest is bound to happen, brothers and sisters. And that is why it is important. Lord Krishna told to you, Arjuna, Satatam Yoginaha. You have to be always in that state of mind and being. All right. And Brahmavid Brahmeva Bhavati. Everything is the same consciousness. So this is an important journey that we have taken possibly a couple of weeks, couple of sessions or 2-3 sessions we'll try to engage in on this. Are we spiritually progressing? Satsangatve, this is how Shri Adi Shankaracharya ji, he depicted, he says Satsangatve Nisangatvam, that is from many you become to one, you start delving within, you start diving within from Nisangatve Nirmohatvam, you come to such a state that disillusionment sets in, that is detachment sets in. All right. When somebody asks Swami, I want moksha, Swami said, when your moha is kshaya, that is when you destruct and destroy the moha, the attachment, you attain moksha. And that is the biggest challenge, brothers and sisters. We'll have a session separately on sealing of desires, by the way, because that's an important topic for us. But it connects a lot with moha and the body attachment and the desires. And remember, in the word desire, you have the word ire hidden in it. Ire is anger. So desire is always something which will breed greed, which will breed anger, and so on and so forth. So we'll take a session on that separately. So sasangatve nisangatvam nisangatve nirmohatvam, that is detachment, delusionment. What Lord Buddha had when he was a Siddhartha, when he was walking out, was it easy for him to walk out? Was not several tests done? We are all engulfed in similar situations. But he was a prince. He could have enjoyed his life. His mission was very clear. When he saw a sickness and a dead body, an old man, he wanted to find an answer. So with the detachment, he went out. Nirmohatve nishal tatvam. Now, detachment in itself was not enough, because we have to get rid of the previous, all the vasanas that has imprinted on the chitta, the impurities that is residing there. So now the sadhana, the tapas begins when you start removing and scrubbing. Scrubbing process is called sadhana. Sadhana is sad hana. Yeah, I mean, just breaking it. When hana means destroying, sadness. Sad is sadness. So when you process, you work in a process to destroy the sadness. That means you become more and more happy. You become more and more joyful and blissful. That is the true sadhana of state of being in. All right. So nisangatve nirmohatvam nirmohatve nishchal tatvam. That means once you remove the impurities, you're presenting a heart so beautiful, so clear. You know, it's just like Laila Majnu, anyone. Whatever the histories we hear about those beloved and the love stories, is just because they offered a pure, simple, single sofa, seated sofa heart. So how much it is required for Bhagwan? Remember this. Nishal Tatve. When your friend is coming, let's say somebody has come from some department to inquire, what do? You make him sit in the outhouse or maybe in the room that is outside. When somebody else is coming, you prepare your living room, your friends, because you want it to be clean. They come and have a nice time. Then when your cousins are coming, you prepare a guest bedroom to clean it nicely. But when your mother, parents, and everyone is coming, you prepare your master bedroom, you clean it nicely and give it to him. Remember, when we are invoking Bhagwan, we have to clean so much of the rooms that we have within so that he can come and reside in us. That is Nishchal Tatve, pure heart. Nishchal Tatve, Jivan Mukti. And then it leads to a state of Jivan Mukti where you exist as a realized soul, as Buddha did for several years, propagating Buddhism. All right. So this is again a very important part of the spiritual progression that have we worked on consciously understanding where we are into this journey. It cannot go without understanding that there is a very tough fight between Dehabhiman and Atmabhiman, the ego that has engulfed us, right? Multiple identities we have created. We are thinking that we are human beings and having a human experience, or we are not. We must realize we are not a human being having a spiritual experience. Rather, we are spiritual beings who have come down to have a human experience. How different are these two statements? To come with an understanding that we are already a spiritual being, which Swami has told by invoking the Divyatma Swarup Lara when he used to address, telling us that in fact he stopped in 99, the Pad Namaskar he used to give to Sevadal and everyone. Why? Because he says, you are God, I am God. You got to realize that you are divinity within you. And that's why he said you are a spiritual being who have come down to have a human experience due to accumulated various things that we have in our previous janma, which is not settled account. All right. And that's where Atma Bhiman comes in. So again, a very important part where you see the desires, the ego, they make a difference to the complete personality, at least the spiritual personality that we are on in. Let me see. We have okay. I think we'll deal with the next slide next time because we have Brother Rishi here. I would not take much of time because he's out here. Let me just stop the sharing. All right. So, brothers and sisters, we'll continue with this topic. Are we spiritually progressing, and how to measure in the weeks or the sessions that will come? Meanwhile, we are really happy, and it's a real pleasure to have Brother Rishi, whom we all have been seeing in the Sai Center for several years. The whole family is Sai Maya, Sarvamaya Vishnumayam. The same thing that we see when we see Auntie Karishma, his mother, such an blessed singer who enthralls everyone, connects everyone to Bhagwan. Brother Sundar, his father, who is heading and is the president of Sai Society in Singapore, and his sister is equally such a divine soul. So we have Brother Rishi, who has inspired a lot of youth in Singapore, Swami's youth, Sai youth, and please welcome him. Brother Rishi, it's all yours if you're there.
Sai Ram, thank you so much for the kind words, brother. I, very honored to be invited to share some thoughts with you. When Brother Bindu initially said, come and, speak with the satsang, my first reaction is I don't know what I'm going to share. I think, many people on the call are people, those whose names I can see. I'm familiar with many of you from the center, and my first thought was actually I should be looking to learn from all of you, and the way Swami does things. Of course, the things that I thought I would talk about or share with you about actually fits in perfectly with the topic that Brother Bindu has chosen for the wonderful, beautiful, energizing satsang that you've just given us. And this idea of progress in spirituality and how to think about progress, because I have the only thing I can think of sharing with all of you is to be honest where I am in my own spiritual journey, and some reflections on that.
Sure, brother. One second, we can't see you. Your video is not on.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
Yeah.
Now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Yeah. So I thought what I can do is share where I feel I am in my own spiritual journey. What are some of the questions on my mind, and then if anybody has any reactions to that, or anybody has any similar experience, I would love to hear about your experience or any insights that you have reacting to anything that I might share with you today. So, thank you again to all of you for the opportunity to share. Thank you to Swami for the opportunity, for the wonderful satsang that we just had, and also for perfectly aligning. This is not coordinated or anything, but perfectly aligning the topic that I was hoping to speak about, and the topic that Brother Bindu shared in the satsang just now. But before I get into that, I mean, the other thing that Brother Bindu said to talk about was kind of my own journey, and as he mentioned, the whole family has been with the center for a long time. So for me, the unexciting, boring truth of my journey is that I was just born into it. It's been part of my life from day one. But I thought what I could do actually is share some childhood memories, first of all, of what I remember from the very earliest days of my involvement with the center, and specifically about our physical center. And then after that, talk a little bit more about some of the other things more closely related to spiritual progress. Many of you who might have seen pictures of how our center looked in the 80s. And that is actually, to be honest with you, some of my fondest memories of being in the center. That's where I did my Bal Vikas classes back when I was a child. And just to help you imagine, what the center was like physically and what it looked like. If you look next door to 133 Molmain, you look at 135 Molmain. It's actually an old bungalow from, British colonial days, maybe even pre-colonial days. Not pre-colonial, sorry, colonial days, the pre-war days. So many decades old now. It was that kind of building, but that has been updated. So that this was even, a prior version of that. It was thin wooden walls. There was like a big open area of just sand in the front of the center. There was nothing. There was no, landscaping or anything. It was just bare sand, and there was this wooden old bungalow. And the way the bungalows were built in those days, like it was the rooms are in a rectangle, and in the middle is open. So the rain, if it was raining, the rain would come inside. That's how the houses are designed. And the walls were very thin. We're having Bal Vikas in one class. You can hear the bhajan practice happening in the next room, and the sound is traveling, and everybody is just there. There's some area for food. And then outside, there's people coming in and out because the seva activities are happening. But it was a lot of fun. All of us would just play, the kids would play in the sand and, dig up little pieces of glass. And as a child, obviously, that's the perspective I have. But now as an adult, you come to know, of course, to even get that premises was a huge deal, let alone think about a 4-story building. I mean, that is just, such a... today we just like go up and down the stairs and take the lift up and down, and it's just the most normal thing. But if you think about like what it looked like then, and how blessed and fortunate we are to have, the center that we do today, it's just hard to draw that dot from where it was to where what it became, and we're so blessed. But I thought I'd just share that memory, because I know that it's been a long time since, for many people, this is the only building we've known. This is the only physical center we've known. So that is kind of the start of all of this. And then at some point, I did my Bal Vikas over there. And then when the center was being built, when they broke down the old building, there's a bit of disruption to all our spiritual practice, and our bhajan practice was in one place, and Bal Vikas happened in another place. And then finally everything was able to come back to 133 Molmain, and several years later. So now I'm just going to fast forward to kind of the present day, and talk about some of the questions in my mind when I think about spiritual progress and spiritual journey today. I'll just share this with you, and you can tell me also what you think at the end of the session. At some point in my life, as an adult, all through life, we've done the bhajans, done the mantras, read all the books, done the stories, taken part in dramas, and depicted some of these gods or religious, personalities. We've gone through all these things that all of us are so familiar with. At some point in life, I started to have the experience that the spiritual journey and spiritual practice was actually bringing happiness in life. Yeah, so I want to make that distinction clear. When I was a kid, I would do all these things mechanically. In fact, there was a period in my life when bhajans would be held in mandapam, and I would find it very boring. And me and one other friend of mine, who's also around the same age, we would go in the car park at the back of mandapam, and we would just be chit-chatting in the car park, and the bhajans would be going on in the prayer hall. At that point, some things were more interesting, some things were less interesting, but there wasn't really, too much. You're doing things mechanically and not really clear about what value you're getting from these activities. You do it, your parents tell you to do it, you say, okay, fine, this is what I've always been doing, you just go and do it. You don't, as a child or teenager, you don't really sit and think, how is this affecting my life? You just do it because it's there. At some point in your life, you start to do it because you decide yourself that you want to do it. And why is that? Because you actually find it's starting to make your life happier. And it's not just happier when you are doing the satsang, or when you are in the bhajan, or when you are reading the books. It's happier because you are able to take some of that, whether it's the bhakti, or whether it's the knowledge, or whether it's the insights and reflections that you have, you're able to find use for it in the rest of your life and apply it in a way that increases your happiness in life. So I don't know, one of the things I wonder about sometimes is, when did that transition happen? What happened? What was the transition that happened? Was it that something suddenly clicked? Was it some specific experience? Or is it just some kind of natural journey that people go through? Kind of like education, you learn all kinds of things as a kid, not knowing whether or not you'll use it, but then some point in your life it comes back and it's useful to you. So I don't know the answer, but I suppose the first point, in what I'm sharing with you today is that at some point in life I made an observation that spiritual practice is actually increasing happiness in the rest of my life. It means outside of the actual exercise of the practice. So, that made me that kind of changed my approach a little bit to spiritual practice, because at the end of the day, put everything aside, the reason you do any kind of spiritual practice is because it's supposed to help you experience something in your life. It's supposed to help you experience happiness, bliss, whatever you call it, peace, give you a sense of peace in a difficult time, or even on a day-to-day basis, on a normal day, give you a sense of oneness with other people, give you a, less of a sense of separation, give you a clearer understanding of your own self, of your own nature, of all the existence around you. These are the things that are supposed to, you're supposed to derive value from. So your spiritual practice is supposed to be useful to you. And so I kind of went from the stage of doing things to realizing that this was creating value for me, and then trying to understand, where is this value coming from? What am I know I'm feeling happier. What am I gaining from it? And how can I make sure that now, so now the question I start asking myself is, when I'm doing spiritual practice, how there's now a cause and effect, right? I'm doing it, I'm getting happiness. I'm doing it, I'm getting happiness. So how can I do this in a way that is maximizing my happiness? The key point is that at some point you start doing this because it's actually useful. You're starting to feel value from it. It's really improving your quality of life. And improving your quality of life and your sense of well-being is one thing, but at a fundamental level, humans have certain questions that all of us think about and wonder about, right? I think, and you know, I'm happy to please share your perspective as well. But I feel like everybody kind of at some fundamental level is wondering, why am I here? Who is God? What is real? What is not real? You know, what is the nature of me? What is the nature of the world, of the universe? You know, how do you reconcile science and what we are told in science and what we are told in religion? And so, you know, the more that you are able to find answers to these questions, the more you are able to feel a sense of fulfillment in your life, and that sense of seeking and questioning is being fulfilled, right? And so your spiritual practice should be useful to you in giving you these experiences. Hopefully everybody agrees with that statement. And so the question I ask is, if you're not feeling that way in some, you know, in some way, if you're not getting that experience as you do your spiritual practice, even if it's not, you know, a complete experience, I'm not saying that you do this and suddenly your whole life is bliss, but in moments you're getting that sense of clarity and you're getting that bliss and that awareness. If you're not sensing that progress, you know, you have to ask, why is that happening? And I feel like a lot of people, when they come up against this barrier in their practice, they'll turn around and blame it on the religion. So they'll say, oh, this is nonsense, this is all ritualistic, I don't believe in this, and they'll just drop the practice altogether, which is a bit strange. So I'll give you an analogy. When I was 10 years old, for a few months, I started to learn how to play tabla. And if any of you have tried to hit a tabla before, you'll know that the first time you hit it, you get a very dull sound. You won't get any kind of beat. You know, it's just it'll sound the same as hitting a table or hitting a piece of plastic or anything. It's just like a dull tapping sound. And so, you know, in the classroom there was maybe 8 or 10 different tablas. And so we would, you know, take and press and try and see which one would be getting the sound, because it's hard to get the sound out. It takes, you know, 1 or 2 weeks of practice to actually get a nice, clear sound. And then the teacher would see us and he would say, what are you doing? What are you choosing? So he'd say, oh, this one is a good tabla, this one is not a good tabla, the sound is not coming. And he'd say, give it to me. And then he would play it and it would sound perfectly good. And so the point of this analogy is the problem is there's nothing wrong with the tabla. The trouble is that we didn't know what we're doing. In the same way, if you are going through your spiritual practice and you're not getting any sound from it, don't throw away the tabla. Don't throw away the practice. You know, think about, what am I doing wrong? What am I not? What have I not learned? What do I need to learn? And what do I need to? This is a practice, right? So what do I need to practice in order to be getting that value, getting that clear sound from what I'm trying to do every day and every week? Yeah. So hopefully that makes sense. So don't blame the religion. Don't blame the tabla. Change the way that you are practicing. Change the way that you are, or get somebody else to teach you what you need to do differently, so that you can continue to get value. Because the problem is not with the religion or the spiritual practice. There's thousands and hundreds of thousands of people out there who are getting immense amount of happiness from doing exactly these same things. And they're doing it in a way that increases their happiness. But the point of, you know, the flip side of saying that, actually one other point before I say that, once you've learned to get the sound out of the tabla, then you have this tool that you can use. You have this knowledge that you can use, and it's with you. It's up to you. It's not saying that, you know, you've got this a secret to getting the sound out of a tabla. It doesn't mean you're going to play the tabla all the time, every single day, every week, every time there's an occasion, you'll just play. No, it's there for you. And same with spiritual knowledge. You can anytime you want, you can go back and play it. You can take it and play it. So same with spiritual knowledge. Doesn't mean that you need to be doing this, if you are busy in your day-to-day life, you have commitments, you have children, blah blah blah, you can't spend as much time doing these spiritual practices. But as and when you need it, it's there for you. So you need to create a sense of peace. You know how to do it with your mantra or your japa or your you need to create a sense of auspiciousness. You know how to tune your mind using whatever tools that you have to be able to create that sense that you need. So once you've learned that practice and you're able to harness it as and when you need it, it's there with you. So same, that ability to get the sound out of tabla. I haven't played tabla in years, but today if I get one, at least I know how to strike it to get that clear sound. So similar thing. So, and the point of saying this is that many people will move away from the practice, and that's not the answer. The answer is to move closer to it, but then find the right role for it in your life. So the point again, coming back to all, why am I saying all of this? Coming back to the point I made earlier, you have to ask yourself: is this spiritual practice being useful to you or not? Don't do it just for the sake of doing it, because um, there's so much more that it has to offer you. There's so much more that it's had to offer me, and so I do wonder, what is it about? Um, what is it about the state of mind um, that what state of mind do you have to be in to allow you to get all of these benefits? And specifically, one of the things that I wonder about is, um, would it have been possible to get to the state where you're able to kind of use these spiritual tools in a way that increases your happiness without going through the experience of that routine, boring behavior, repetitive behavior when you're a child? I don't know the answer to that, but I think, Mike, if I had to come up with a conclusion, I would say that as a kid, it probably was pretty fundamental in giving me some kind of knowledge or awareness of basic level knowledge, because you have to build on something, right? With children, a lot of time you just like do it because it's good, do it because um, you know uh, this is the tradition, or this is, even we don't necessarily question it. It's what we did, therefore this is what you should do. I don't know if I think it's actually, maybe there's no choice. So in other words, I'm trying to say, can you take this? If I were to try and explain to a child what I just explained now, how this idea of spirituality, being able to, use mantras to tune your mind and all of this, children won't be able to do that, right? But um, if I had not been given those practices that I'm calling boring, today I would not be able to take this and say this is adding happiness to my life. And so I wonder if it's actually necessary to go through all of that. So to be a bit more concrete in terms of an example, when I was a child, obviously we all know about all the epics in our tradition. We learned about Mahabharata. I could not understand Mahabharata. The story was too long, too many characters, confusing names, made no sense, to be honest. I knew who was Krishna, I knew who was Arjuna. Could understand Gita as part of Mahabharata, basic things like that. I couldn't understand what was going on. And so I never took an interest in it. But then in adult life, um, when life presents you with the opportunity to gain those insights and actually learn a bit more and start to inquire about um, the mysteries and the enigmas and the paradoxes that are in this epic, the insights that you can gain and the explanations are truly phenomenal for being able to apply in your own day-to-day life, right? And this is, I'm saying this with a fairly limited amount of knowledge. I'm sure many of you, um, will be able to speak to the application of the lessons from all of our, spiritual personalities in day-to-day life. But even in small ways, it's possible to see how you can get that clarity to apply these lessons. but it's very, very difficult. And you see people struggle with this all the time. If you just read any kind of, Western scholarly kind of interpretation of Mahabharata, it's superficial at best, even though it's leading personalities, or rather leading authorities on Hindu traditions or whatever it may be. If it's a Western interpretation, they're only scratching the surface because they don't have the mental model to be able to pull the lessons out of these texts, because they're very, very subtle lessons. So I'm starting to come to the conclusion that you have no choice but to kind of go through this, go around in circles almost. You come to the material ones on a very superficial level, just to understand basics of the story. Then you come back again and learn a bit more, and then you learn a bit more, and then each time you come back to it, you start to get the real. After a while, maybe only after decades, you get the real value, and you start to see things that actually increase the happiness in your life. And you're able to apply it to improve the quality of your well-being and the quality of your life. So maybe I know I've taken up the time. That's more or less all I had to share. I guess the only other thing I wanted to say was, based on all of that, one of the things that I enjoy doing, and I hope we always encourage one another to do in satsangs, is to question everything, no matter how high the authority giving you some information. If it's not making sense to you and it's not clear to you how you can apply this in your life, don't accept it. I'm not saying that you should argue with it or push it away or negate it. Keep it with you, but only internalize it once it actually really makes sense to you. I think that's super important, because if your spiritual practice is supposed to increase the happiness of your life, and if you have found a way for your spiritual practice to increase the happiness of your life, then don't let in anything that you're not sure how it's going to increase your happiness. Right? So you have to question everything, no matter how high the authority, and do it lovingly. I'm not saying you should argue or insult or throw it away or be dismissive or anything like that. Do it lovingly, but keep it with you until it makes sense, and then you internalize it. And encourage your kids to take the same approach. I know it's a bit harder. Kids anyway like to ask a lot of questions, and you have to answer all the questions. But encourage your kids to do the same thing, because at some point they're going to have to think independently and make that decision for themselves. Is my spirituality increasing my happiness? And if
Yeah. Yeah, I think we had lost you for the last 1 minute or so, Brother Rishi.
Hello, I'm back.
Yeah.
Back. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now we can hear you. Last minute we could not get.
Oh, okay. All I was saying is make sure you question everything and encourage your kids to question everything, because at the end of the day, when they have to be independent in their own spiritual journey, they will know how to get happiness.
Absolutely. Oh, thanks.
That's all. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Brother Rishi. Thanks for joining in on short notice, taking time and sharing. One of the very, very important and message that what you have shared is spiritual journey brings happiness. And what are the humans behind? Have you do we see somebody very happy on the road? We say, why are you happy? We normally see when somebody says, okay, what's bothering you? So happiness is nature of a man, right? So if what Brother Rishi said, if a spiritual journey is bringing happiness, then I think we are on the right track. And that's the progress that we are talking about. Are we spiritually progressing towards that? So it connects very well to the topic, though he didn't know what the topic was. How Swami connects it, we all can see here. And we thank Brother Rishi once again for that beautiful insight. And you made a very pertinent some of the questions, like the analogy with the tabla and the player, and how we get disrupted. The only point here, what you also said is, while we can have the queries, it's very important we must keep drilling at the same place if we need water. We can't change the spot, we can't change the goalposts, because the real answers are real pearls are got only when we dive deep into the ocean. So unless we have done that endeavor of going really deep and finding out, I think the answers will still be elusive. So thanks, Brother Rishi. Maybe we'll connect again sometime, and with Auntie Karishma or Sister Divya sometime in the future. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for the opportunity. Sai Ram.
Thanks. So we'll end the session. We don't have Brother Shastri today in the session, so we'll end the session with Samasta Loka. समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः जय बोलिए भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की Jai. Sai Ram, brothers and sisters. Thanks for joining. Have a great days ahead. Blessed Sunday, and we'll catch up with the same. Let's measure our happiness in the progress that we were talking about, and Brother Rishi shared, till we catch up again to discuss and dissect it more. Thank you, Sai Ram.
Thank you. Thank you, brother, and Sai Ram, everyone.
Sai Ram.
Yeah.